evening and welcome to the Arena 246. My name is Sheena Gooden, member of the Barbados Athletes Commission and a former Barbados National Track and Field athlete. I'm a proud graduate of Austin P. State University, located in Clarksville, Tennessee, and Illinois State University, located in Bloomington, Normal, Illinois. I want to welcome you, if we have any first time viewers, to a series of sessions put on by the Arena 246. Just to give you a little background, the Barbados Athletes Commission is pleased to announce the launch of the Arena 246. This is our Athletes Commission Forum. It is themed around entrepreneurship and business. The acronym ARENA stands for Accelerating the Rise of Entrepreneurship of National Athletes. This is an initiative driven by one of our objectives, which is to support the development of athletes on and off the field of play. In addition, this virtual event is held in partnership with the National Olympic Academy of Barbados. You may ask, who is this for? Whether you are an emerging athlete now starting your career, an athlete looking to start a business alongside your training and competition, managing both a business and athletic career, looking to transition from sport to a new career, or have retired from your sporting career and transitioning into a new career, the Arena 246 is for you. Tonight's topic, balancing education and sport. And I am now pleased to introduce the hosts for tonight, the participants for tonight. We have Mr. Nikki Wood. He's a United States-based senior men's Barbados volleyball player. Wood is a proud alumnus of the Garrison Secondary School, where he was an active participant in cadets and sports. His involvement in sports would eventually lead him to finding the game of volleyball. This budding passion for the game kicked off Wood's commitment to his development, which led to him representing the nation at the youth and junior level, where he won numerous awards. This success at the junior level was seen by recruiters and led to Wood accepting a scholarship to attend Culver Stockton College, where he would later be a student athlete. Wood's success would also continue at the collegiate level, becoming the college's first men's volleyball All-American and the owner of many records. Wood was inducted into the Missourian Sports Hall of Fame in 2018. Wood later went on to earn an MBA in Organization and Talent Development from DeSales University in Pennsylvania. Wood is currently a career development counselor and first-year instructor at Augustana College in Rock Island, Illinois, where he primarily works with students in the fields of business, accounting, and marketing. Wood also conducts all of the employee relations with organizations in the Midwest region. Welcome, Aminuki.
Hello, good night. How are you?
Fine, thank you. To introduce our other panelists tonight, we have Ms. Tristan Evelyn. Tristan is a Barbadian Olympic track and field athlete who competes in the 100 meters and 200 meters sprint events. Tristan represented Barbados at the Olympic Games in track this year, Tokyo 2020-2021. And this was her Olympic debut, I might add. Tristan is the Barbados national record holder in the women's 100 meters and the indoor 200 meters. Tristan is a two-time NCAA All-American, four-time conference champion, and is a current graduate student at the University of Houston in the Human Resource Development Program. Welcome, Tristan.
Hi, Sheena. Thank you guys for having me tonight.
You're welcome. And to our final presenter tonight, we have Mrs. Helen Gore, PhD. She was an academic counselor with the Department of Athletics at the University of Houston from 2005 to 2021. Before coming to the UH Athletic Department staff in the Academic Center for Excellence, she served as a visiting assistant professor for the Human Development and Family Studies program for 7 years. She also is currently an adjunct professor of child development at Lone Star College in Kingwood. Prior to coming to U of H, she coordinated services for our Stand-Up Place Transitional Living Program. It's a program for single homeless mothers at a children's center. Helen received her Bachelor's of Science in Human Development and Family Studies and her Master's of Education in Educational Psychology at the University of Houston at University Park. She received her doctorate in Education Psychology, Individual Differences from the University of Houston from the College of Education. Gore specializes in adolescent and effective development. She has worked with the Protective Services Training Institute of Texas, providing training for those who work in child and adult protective services. She has authored several articles, presented at several conferences, both nationally and internationally, and co-authored the books Think, Divergent Concepts on Theory and Practice in Educational Psychology, and Carl Jung and Other Methodologies, Freud and the Freudians, and Weaving Family History, The Construction of Families. Her dissertation was on ego development and decision making in pregnant adolescents. She had presented at several NCAA 4 conferences on successful advising of student athletes. Gorlier has also served as a sponsor of a church youth group, Girl Scout leader, service team chairperson for Girl Scouts, the vice president of the First Colony Soccer Club, and on various committees for schools, churches, and other civic organizations. And now present to you Mrs. Helen Gore Lear. Welcome.
Thank you, Sheena, and thank you for having me at this conference.
You are most welcome. So we will go ahead and get started. Like I mentioned before, our topic tonight is balancing education and sport. And we will start with Nikki.
Yeah, can everyone hear me well?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much for me, kind of just to give a little bit of background as it relates to how it all started. As you would have heard, as we started to talk about kind of looking at our overall upbringing and getting to this point, pretty much our biographies. For me, it was really upon finding the passion of this sport, looking at the opportunities that later came along after playing with the national team. I was able to kind of get recruited and been lucky enough to attend Culver Stockton. During my time there, I was really able to expand my opportunities as a student athlete primarily. Like my mother always used to joke, don't burn your candle, don't burn out your little candle. But for me, being overly involved was a huge thing for me. And really harping on the opportunities that I had, really balancing my education with a lot of things really helped me overall. I know Tristan, we're going to talk about it later, but really finding that balance was vital for me in order to be successful on a long-term basis. And those skill sets that I would have attained on the court were able to be transferable into the world of work. Later going on to enter my master's, going on to DeSales University, where I was been able to really expand and grow myself from a professional standpoint, working with corporations from an HR perspective, and then transitioning into that, what I found to be extremely important for me to really transition that to the to higher education and to really know operate in a career development role was a huge component for me. That's just a brief background as it relates to me getting where I am today. And then I know we're going to expand it out a little bit more as the conversation starts to continue.
Yes. For me, I got my start at Springer Memorial Secondary, where it basically was drilled into our heads to be excellent. So excellent, the only way was our motto. And for me, I didn't simply want to be good at sports, but also in the classroom. And recognizing that being good in the classroom, as well as in sports, allowed doors to open up for me and led me to be recruited and offered multiple athletic scholarships, ranging from Division I, Division II, NAIA, and junior colleges. And that helped me to see the value and the importance of balance. I went on to Monroe College, where I accepted a 2-year athletic scholarship. It's a junior college located in New Rochelle, New York. And there I studied business management for 2 years before transferring to the University of Houston. And there I continued my studies in business, and where I am currently in the process of completing my master's in human resource development.
I came to athletics as an advisor. And I came from being a professor, so I know both sides of, of the academic world for athletes. I worked with athletes in the program that I was in as a professor, and that's how I got introduced to the athletic department. And they stole me away from my professorship, uh, and I worked in the athlete department for 17 years, advising students and helping them learn what that balance is between their athletics, their academics, and their social life, because there's always three components for athletes. Uh, and so, my 17 years of experience that I bring to you tonight, I hope you have lots of questions. Uh, I bring that expertise and the things that I've seen that athletes have struggled with in terms of that balance. I will be able to share with you tonight. And I'm really happy to be here with Tristan and Amuki, who have actually been athletes and have really struggled with those concepts, and have also seen their former and current teammates also struggle with those issues. So it's a world of uh, experience and advice in this conference tonight, and we look forward to being able to share some of those insights with you. Don't let the introduction with all my credentials scare you. I'm still a human being, and my kids always just called me either Dr. Helen or just Helen sometimes, and I was happy with that. I wanted to be a friend to them. So, what I would like to do is sort of start the conversation and ask Tristan and Maki, when you were considering a college, because I'm assuming both of you got offered scholarships in the States, that's why you ended up here in the States. And as international students, you go through a different kind of process than students who are in the States. Uh, so that process, what did you find most uh, the hardest, and what did you find the easiest about that process? And who was your mentors, and how did you seek out advice?
Yeah, of course. Tristan, you want to tackle it first?
Sure. For me, my mentor was Sean DePini. He was a teacher, a professor at Springer Memorial, and he kind of walked me through the whole recruiting process and really helped me to get, to get all the information I needed to be able to accept an athletic scholarship. So we would have regular meetings where he would sit me down and basically go through the process with me, like the NCAA clearinghouse and what are the eligibility requirements for an athlete, which are like the subjects you need to take, would it be I think it was math, English, a social science, pure science, and a foreign language, as well as the SATs or the ACTs. So he, just walked me through that process, and yeah, just helped me navigate through that journey. To me, the hardest part was just finding out what it was I needed to do or to have in order to be accepted into college. And the NCAA clearinghouse, which is a system that you have to go through to get approved to be eligible to compete. And that process was very, very tedious. They ask you a bunch of information about your family, their background, stuff that I personally didn't even know. I had to go to my parents and say, hey, mom, hey, dad, do you guys have this? I did not even know. So that process was really overwhelming at times. But I think the easiest part of it for me was just going on the visits and really being able to interact with the coaches, the athletes, seeing what the programs were like. I remember going on my visit to the University of Houston. That was my first visit, and I was like, I'm going there. I fell in love with the team, the culture, the equipment and resources. I was like, I was so like starstruck by the facilities and everything that they had to offer. And to me, that was just the easiest part about it was just interacting with everybody. Another difficult thing I would say that was for me that I encountered was deciding which college to go to. I had numerous offers, honestly, probably about over 20 offers from different universities. And selecting which college I wanted to go to was really hard because I think you only get about 3 or 4 official visits. And again, 20 offers, 3 or 4 visits, it was tough. I ended up not taking my other three visits, and ultimately my heart was at University of Houston. So that's where I ended up initially. That's not where I chose. My story is a little bit unorthodox. So coming out of Barbados, I was 16 years old when I was recruited. So being that I was 16 and so young, I chose to go the junior college route just to have a smoother introduction and development into the American athletic and academic system. And after Nikki talks about his experience, I'll come back to like how I went about making that decision and everything. So
Yeah, of course. I guess a lot of our easy parts align with that. So I could start there talking about primarily being. I think the easy thing for me was knowing that wherever I made my decision, I knew I would operate necessarily with a chip on my shoulder, so there would be a sense of commitment. Like I
yeah,
knew that wherever I went, I had to be committed. There was a level of work that had to because there was a small pocket of us coming from the island that tend to get these opportunities. So I needed to grasp them. I think when we look at the talent base across different disciplines, but primarily for volleyball, being slightly biased, um, we have a plethora of talent there. But it's really are they getting the opportunities? So being one of the few that had the opportunities, for me, from a mentor perspective, I was able to have really good people in the corner, being like Anicia Woods, Cherry Matthews, those who may have walked the walk before. I was able to ask them key questions. Now, not to call them old, but the recruiting concepts that they would have went through would have changed in time. So I did have a couple of friends who were abroad during the period too that I was able to ask, like Brian Goodrich and some others, like Raphael Anthony and a few others. It was about 5 to 6 that were already abroad at different institutions. So I was able to ask them some key questions. For me, so from a sense of mentorship, I was really able to have really good people in good places, Roxanne Ford, others who would have been able to kind of guide me along the way. I think I still had to put in a lot of the work, especially seeing that men's volleyball action in America is still a developmental sport technically from that lens. So for me, I had a lot of offers on the table from schools, but then the hard part was navigating your cultural fit coming from a small island, looking at is this going to work for me? Can I handle going into an environment that we go into an environment with different weather? Do I want to go someplace warm like Tristan and go to Houston? I probably should have went someplace warm, but it's okay. I'm not salty about it anyways. But really just finding that cultural fit, but most importantly, finding the environment that I knew I would be successful in, I guess was the hard part. So really navigating that eventually turned out to be something very good for me because once I saw the opportunity, the difference between, I guess the only difference in our story, Tristan, would be I was not lucky enough to have 3 to 4 visits because of how the volleyball cycle works. It just wouldn't, it would have been too expensive to go on visits at that time. So technically, it ended up being me just looking at virtual tours, going through the process. I tried to speak to people or anyone from the Caribbean, primarily anyone that I knew in the volleyball fraternity from the Caribbean that may have been abroad, just really drilling them, like asking them key questions and stuff like that to really help get to my decision.
Right. Thank you both for that. When you got to the university that you finally selected, did you find that you had people there to guide you through the process of getting introduced to the university, and how to select your classes, how to, or just even how, sometimes it's just, how do I go and get my equipment? I mean, those are some of the questions when do I get my equipment, or when is practice? Um, so who was there to help guide you in your university? Because I know each university has different ways in which they handle that.
Yeah, of course. I'll attack it first. Really, for me, technically, upon arriving at my particular college, how they have it was you were technically assigned an academic counselor, essentially, pretty much a mentor to guide you through the onboarding process, pretty much. With that, also you had your primarily your focused like first year advisor courses where you had a first year or peer mentor to help be of aid to you. But really, what would end up happening was you grew a healthy relationship with that academic advisor or academic counselor who would have been of aid to you. So primarily, how we had it structured at my institution was we had an academic counselor per sporting discipline. So you end up growing a really pretty close relationship. I tell people all the time, like you end up that person ends up becoming someone very special to you, to the point that I've been at their wedding, they'll probably be at my wedding too. But like you just like that healthy relationship that you grow there. Um, I was also lucky enough. I had a couple friends from the volleyball fraternity in the Caribbean who were at close by universities, so I was able to kind of like sometimes get some guidance from them on certain things. But really, that relationship with the academic counselor coming on really, I like to tell people it makes or breaks your first year experience, and most importantly, that can make a break and make your decision on your first year students actually transfer if they don't build a relationship with an academic counselor at early age, at an early time. It can eventually lead to that individual potentially transferring. So I was lucky enough to have a great academic counselor.
Yes, quite similarly, Nikki, the initial onboarding process for me occurred with you, Miss Helen. You were the one that the first person from the University of Houston that I really got acquainted with quickly. I remember spending numerous hours in your office just trying to figure out what paperwork I needed to, get done, in order to go to classes and to go to practice. And I remember you asking me like what was I passionate about, and we concluded that I was good at everything except science. So I went the I went the business route again, obviously because I usually gravitated towards the business subjects more. So you helped me with that, selecting my courses and classes like that. Um, and also as an international student it's a little bit different because you have to go through the international check-in process, and through that system I was able to get acquainted with a couple of advisors through the ISSS, I think is what it's called.
ISSO.
ISSO, correct. I was able then to, they help you navigate as an international student to get settled in. They have like welcoming centers and programs and stuff like that for you to just, feel comfortable. You're in a unfamiliar territory, much less a new country, and it's tough. You struggle at first. You feel like you're out of place. And so those communities, the international student services, really helped me to get acclimated and help me to adjust and settle in.
So what I'm hearing from both of you is that the process of selecting a school or just preparing to go to college, and once you get there, the biggest thing is having mentors and seeking out the right mentors to help
Yes.
you through that process. And when you're selecting a school, that's one of the things that you want to look at. Do they have someone in place that will guide me through the processes of this university to help me get through registration, international student issues, which there's usually a lot. I know for University of Houston, and I'm sure other universities because it's a Homeland Security rule, our student athletes were only allowed to have one online class per 9 hours. If you were in 15 hours, you could have two. So we had to watch uh, the classes and make sure that they didn't get too many online classes. I know with Tristan, she was in a program that was very famous for online classes because they served it, uh, an international community that not was just in Houston, but around the world. So they had a lot of online classes, and sometimes we'd have to work and see if we could find a way around it because all of our classes would be online. And that would be my job is to navigate that and know who to talk to and get that sorted out for her. But what I'm hearing from both of you is the key issue is mentors and people to sort of hold your hand those first few years to get you through. Is that correct?
Yeah, most certainly. And it looks like we lost Tristan for it. She'll be back really quickly.
Yeah, she'll be back.
Yeah, but like definitely, I think that's probably the differentiator. It's important to have those mentors because like all the bad or negative emotions can kick in when you feel like you're not getting that help. And I guess I have a question for you, Helen, as it relates to that component. When did you kind of realize that it was necessary for you to want to help these students that were coming in for you?
Hey, I think it's within my nature to be a helper because my master's is actually counseling based.
Yes.
And my first introduction to athletes and their struggles was as a professor, and I would give assignments to them, and they wouldn't do well on them. And I remember having one of my football players. He wrote a paper, and it was awful. It was terribly awful. I remember one sentence in there where he said, "I always wanted to be a football." And so I brought him in and I had him sit in my office. And back then we really didn't have computers. I mean, we had typewriters. And I made him rewrite that paper and bring it to me, and I would edit it. And if it wasn't good enough for an A, I made him rewrite it. And it was like a 5-hour process. And I realized then that if they didn't have someone to really guide them and take interest in them, that they would flounder. And he said no other professor had ever done that to him. And so, and for his whole career, even when he wasn't my student, he would bring that stuff back to be edited by me. And he ended up dropping out his senior year. And then I stayed in touch with him. And I stayed on him until he finished his bachelor's and then made him get his master's. Now he's a coach at a high school.
Wow.
And he still stays in touch with me. And so I think it's within my nature to build those relationships. But I look at each of my athletes as individuals. What are their particular needs? Tristan came in, and yeah, she had struggles just like everybody, adjusting to a new environment and stuff. And I could help navigate it. But she was focused. She was also a good student, and she listened. Some people don't, and so it's my job then to sort of bring them along. And Tristan knows that there's some that I struggle with. But what I did is I tried to set up an office where there wasn't a barrier between me and them, that they would feel comfortable coming in. And because of my counseling background, if they walked by my office, which was mainly glass, I could tell by the way they walked, the way they held their body language, if there was something troubling them. And so I would leave my office and have them come in. And I think that was the key for me, is to trying to make that connection between me and the athletes. And my office was always full. And the one thing I always kept candy because it was baked. And I made cupcakes and stuff for them. But what it did, it built a trust between us. And that's the biggest thing. And I'm sure that both of y'all felt that. If you don't trust the mentor, it's really hard for you to build that relationship. So for me, it was all about building trust and building those long-term relationships. And I'm sure one day I will get to go to Tristan's wedding. I will get to hold her babies and call them grandbabies. But I think for me, as a counselor, or an advisor, what I would be looking for as a student is, how are they responding to the students' needs? Are they just giving me, you got to go do this, you got to go do that, or are they trying to build a relationship with me?
Yeah.
That's what I feel. Tristan, did you have anything you wanted to add to that, or a question you wanted to ask?
No, I mean, upon settling into a new environment, it's very, very difficult. The customs of how things work, it can be overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
I would only suggest to, persons that are going to be in similar situations to don't be afraid to ask for help, to, your advisor, especially. I find that most advisors are very welcoming and they'll walk you through the process step by step, just like you did for me. I remember not knowing how to work the online learning systems and missed a few assignments because I didn't know I had assignments pretty much. But ultimately, I think you learn to adjust pretty quickly. And once you do adjust, you feel less stress, and embrace change, be open to meeting new persons and creating friendships, and sometimes being a little bit lost, like it's going to happen regardless. But just embrace the journey, embrace the process.
Right. Well, one of the things that I also noticed with athletes, is y'all had to balance uh, your academics, your travel. You had to get, uh, you had to know in advance what you were going to do. And I know one of the things that I had my athletes do, and Mookie, you can talk about your experience, is that we did a schedule at the very beginning of school. They would bring their syllabus in, and we would go through, and we would make it's almost like a calendar, but we would, for each class, what was due, when it was due, how much it counted towards your grade, and then we would, after we had all of that in a document that usually was about 2 to 3 pages long, which was a lot less than a syllabus. Then we would go and we would match it with our travel schedule. Oh my God, you have a test here. We need to start taking care of that now. Contact your professor, let them know you're going to miss this test and this test so we can go ahead and make arrangements. Sometimes the professor would say, okay, you can take it before you go, your test before you go. Sometimes it would be, just wait till you get back. And sometimes I would have to make arrangements for them to take it while they was there. But it was all up to the professors. But most part, the professors really didn't want you having to take the test there because that was a lot of paperwork. And I had to get all the information because we couldn't give the test and we had to find a proctor at the school. And so, and then the professor would have to fax the information to that school and get it back from the school. And so very few of our professors wanted that, but a few of them did. Uh, but having that document, and Tristan, you can speak to that as a student, but I think having that document, and anybody can do it for themselves, they don't have to have their advisor do it. But lining out on a calendar or on a document where you can see all the dates that due, when things are due, and what how much it's going to count toward your grade. Because if you miss something that's like 2% of your grade, it's not anything to cry about.
No.
But if you miss it and it's 25% of your grade, then then we have a problem.
Yeah.
And so I think having that document and having the ability to plan ahead for your travel really, really helped the students because we could head off any problems that we foresaw in the future. Now, we had those professors who's had to be announced or to be determined for their dates. Those were the classes we had problems, but that's what I was there for, is to get on those professors to get some dates assigned so that we could plan ahead. Tristan, did you want to speak any more to how we handled?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. So what Miss Helen is alluding to is something we call the proactive meeting. Like she said, it's where the athlete meets with their academic advisor. For me, that was Miss Helen. Like she said, initial meeting, we print out your class schedule, your athletic schedule, and basically identify what your assignments are, the tests, your projects, the quizzes. And also you would know when you have to compete. And one of the biggest things for me was it helped me to be organized. And Miss Helen always kept us in check. She was very, very thorough. So one of the things that she taught me to do is when it's the beginning of the semester, you go and introduce yourself to your professor. That way you already create a relationship you start to create a relationship or a rapport with your professor, because your classes can sometimes be made up of 100 plus students, and it isn't really an opportunity for the professor to know you on a one-on-one basis. So taking that time to go and meet your professor allowed me, the days that I would be absent, to be able to reach out to that professor and say, hey, I'm going to be absent on this day. Can I meet with you during your office hours to, be caught up on a topic, or explain something that I may have missed or didn't understand? So those proactive meetings really helped me a lot, and it saved me at times where I maybe was struggling in a subject. She would say, if you score a certain percentage, you get an A or B on this test. You'll get a B in this class, and you'll be good. You'll pass the class. So those really help you to understand where you're the position you're in within the semester or throughout the semester, because oftentimes you're sitting at home, you're sending in you're submitting assignments, and you aren't sure of what your GPA is, or where you stand academically. You won't know. Usually you don't know until you take your final exams, or whatever the case may be. But with Miss Helen and the proactive meetings, those tell you, okay, right now I've been getting A's and B's in classes, so if I continue to keep this going, I'll pass the class. And this also helps to keep you motivated too, because once you know you're an A, you want to maintain that A, right? If you're at a C, okay, I got to work a little bit harder to make sure that I'm in good standing.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, just to add to that, I think the one thing that goes unnoticed a lot of time with that time management aspect that is required from the student athlete is how transferable that is to a professional perspective. I think a lot of times what people do forget is there's a reason, especially obviously me coming from a career perspective. Um, a lot of times there's a reason high professionals, a lot of higher organizations, and working with my business students, for example, you'll see a lot of Power 5 companies coming in, even for accounts. They'll employee relations will directly contact me and want and request student athletes for reasons like that, along with the transferable skills they gain, the ability to manage high priority and high pressured situations, the importance of time management, the level of communication that's required between the student athlete and a professor ahead of time. These skill sets transfer to the workplace and really are separators for student athletes. So my challenge to student athletes out there that are looking is to welcome and embrace the time management challenge, because understand it's going to be very important that you learn these skills, but do know long term it's a huge benefit for you.
That is very true. The three things that athletes have that they can readily put on their resumes are time management, organization skills, and teamwork. Those are three extremely valuable things in the workforce.
Yep.
And those are things that every athlete every athlete has, because they have to learn how to manage their time if they're going to be successful in school and balance that. What I have found is if they plan ahead, um, they're less stressful, they're more balanced, they get more rest. If they get more rest, they're going to perform better on the track.
Yeah.
I used to like to go and watch my student athletes practice, uh, because if I watched them practice, then I would know whether or not they were getting enough sleep, uh, whether or not they were distracted by other things that were going on in their life. Uh, and then I could work on those things with my student athlete to help bring their life back in balance. Because not only do you have track or volleyball or soccer or whatever sport you're in, you have your academics, but those aren't the only two things that you're doing. You're also trying to build a social life. College is a time where you're making new friends. You're going out. You're in new city, new country if you're international. You have to, and so you want to experience those things.
Yeah.
So when it came to social life, how did you balance those things with your academic and track?
For me, I had like days allocated or time slots for when I would have that free time. Usually it would be on the weekends or maybe a Friday night, when I didn't have a competition, where I could socialize and spend time with my friends. Usually during the week, it would have been too hectic, and often I was too tired from practice and all the other commitments that I had. So I would, or sometimes I would find a library or a coffee shop and meet with a friend, and we would sit down and do our assignments, and in between we would take breaks and just have a conversation. Sometimes the conversation extended to not going back to work, but I tried to usually have most of my socializing on the weekends after I competed or when I had free time.
Yeah, a lot of my practices would have stemmed even from going back to a high school, secondary level. I think Trish, you could probably attest to this. I've been lucky enough to had even like physical education teachers or even good mentors at an early age that were instilling a lot of values at early. Like I tell people, I was definitely not the greatest student at from an academic standpoint at the high school level, but I had a lot of people around me that pushed me to that knew there was better. In doing that, they were instilling a lot of early time management and
Yeah,
balance of a social life at early phase. And when I
yeah,
transitioned to college, it was very similar. Utilizing these components that I would have gained at an early age as it relates to, all right, I know I can allocate this amount of time to something. There has to be, I think the biggest challenge for student athletes coming in at early age is understanding that sacrifice is going to be necessary. But I do want you to be human and not a robot, because a lot of times what you see is we have a lot of student athletes that who performed at an elite level, even myself to an extent sometimes. In hindsight, you think about the sacrifices you made with operating with the chip on your shoulder. There's a lot of opportunities you missed in the process of this. You feel like, darn, I might have missed from a social perspective sometimes.
yeah,
But at an early, I was lucky enough to learn how to allocate that evenly, where it was not a complete cyborg or a robot, although some may have referred to me as it. But I still tried to find balance through utilizing the reverse planning principles. And a lot of times I was just lucky enough to have people that instilled key values, even from an early age, going back all the way back to cadets, all the way back to Garrison School, Garrison Secondary, instilling those values and teaching me how to balance things. And then
yeah.
I just applied that to the college atmosphere.
Now, I'm gonna switch gears a little bit here.
Yeah.
Have either one of you experienced a sports injury,
Yes.
and how did you
Yes.
handle that with your academics and your track schedule and your emotional life? You know how you were feeling emotionally about that injury.
Uh, Honestly, I think every injury was a little bit different for me. It required a little bit more, or me learning a little bit more of myself, or bring a little bit more out of myself. So initially, when I got hurt in college, well, in junior college, I would go to practice. I would still attend practices. I would still try to be there for my teammates and cheer them on anywhere I could. Still try to be involved with the team and not isolate. And also do my part as well to get to heal and to recover by going to rehab or therapy sessions, whatever the case may be. But a lot of the times for me, it was very depressing. um, as an athlete, you want to be out there on the court, you want to be playing, or running or jumping, but sometimes, injuries are unfortunate. So for me, understanding that that's part of the process, and you know, it helped me also to find other things that I was passionate about. So I was very, after getting hurt, I realized I was very passionate about volunteering, and I used then that time away from practice, or maybe the time I needed to heal, to just to find another passion, and that was volunteering and helping other people in need. And that really helped me to stay sane. And it also gave me that motivation, to continue to show up at practice and keep trying and trying and trying again. So
Yeah. So
um,
yeah, when you had the injury and you had to do all these other things, did you feel like your body and your rhythm was thrown out of balance and you had to bring your life back into balance?
yeah, certainly, because as athletes, sport is a big part of your life, right? So I did feel like a part of me was torn apart. And just having to realize, okay, I'm more than an athlete. What else is out there for me? That allowed me then to open up myself and open other doors for me as well.
Mhm.
I think too, from the mental, the academic side of it, once track wasn't working out as well, I then said, okay, I better be getting straight A's. Like that was me challenging myself, so I turned it around. I was like, okay, I better get some good grades because I don't have to be, doing as much on the track right now. Right. So that's how I looked at it.
Yeah, as student athletes coming in, and I think especially playing at a high level, the biggest thing we do is a lot of times our identity is often linked to our sport or discipline. And a
Yeah.
lot of times, I love the motto more than an athlete. Obviously, you see LeBron and a lot of others using that. The motto more than an athlete is very important. And my challenge a lot of times to when I relate it to student athletes, or if I have conversations with kids back home who are thinking about trying to come abroad, um, understanding that your identity is beyond that. For me, like it's oddly enough, my first All American year was the year I was injured, and I pretty much got through the season like the trainers and I got very close. Let's just say that we had a very good relationship. But and a lot of times what I noticed through that injury process, there was a lot of self reflection and noticing you feel like there's an obligation because these people they paid for you to get here, and
Yeah.
you feel like you're not doing your duty to yourself, to your nation, to people that are backing you. You start to ask yourself, like, what are people probably thinking about home? They're not seeing my name in the papers, they're
Yeah.
not hearing about me on the internet, they're not seeing these things, and you start to question yourself in a different perspective and that self-reflection. I think going through that period, honestly, although a lot of people might not want to go through it, I think it actually helped me that self-reflective piece of things to help continue my development and actually push me beyond just thinking where I was at because I was very much in the moment. I need to be an All-American this year. I just need my all is. And the scope was not 5 years ahead. Now, I try to teach people not to think too far ahead, but I realized I was very much in the know, and the next step was still not being processed. So in a weird kind of way, the injury turned out to actually be a benefit from a
Yeah.
self-reflective piece. But my challenge is always see your duty and obligations to yourself, to your family, to who you are as an individual. Don't just tie it to what aided in you getting there, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah. As athletes, I know you face a lot of challenges, with academics, with on the track, or I keep saying track because I work with track so much, but with your sport, uh, and with social life, with injuries, traveling and having assignments due while you're on the road, and I know that for some of my athletes, the time in which they needed to submit an assignment was the time they were going to be out on the field running their event. So I would have to negotiate that. That causes a lot of stress on athletes, and they need to stay focused in their sport. They also need to stay focused in the classroom. Uh, were there ever times that you had to seek out, like someone from the counseling center or from the a mentor, or maybe as you're getting closer to graduation, your career services to help get you recentered and balanced? Mookie?
Yeah, of course. Definitely. The first thing I would always say is seeking help is not a sign of weakness, it's actually a sign of strength. Understanding and know your capabilities, being willing to ask the key questions from individuals who've traveled the path before you will always be the best thing you can do. I think our generation has a tendency to think we know it all, unfortunately. But myself included, because I can be as stubborn as they come. But understanding that seeking that help and not waiting until you burn up, and obviously the duck on the water analogy, really being willing to ask for help. And I think I got very lucky in seeking help from career services and asking those key questions, seeking out mentors, learning to actually utilize the alumni network that comes with going to a prestigious college or university was something that I didn't realize I didn't utilize enough. Eventually, when I realized that it wasn't too late because it turned out to really good networking opportunities. But what I will always say is to student athletes, don't hesitate, seek that help, seek that guidance. There's a lot of people that have the answers to your questions because there's always someone that's done it before you. So for me, it was really going to career services and seeking mentorship from people that I know would have traveled the path.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. again, seeking help is not, as you said, it's not a weakness. As a student athlete, you are given additional resources. So it's onus on you, because it's there to help you succeed. So it's onus on you to take advantage of them because it makes your life so much easier. And, some of those resources that I sought out were tutoring services, the proactive meetings with with the academic advisors, the office hours with the professors, mandatory study halls, which for me didn't work that well because I find that I work in a quiet environment, and just having all of my teammates around was just a big distraction for me. So I try to do my work before study hall, or if I do go to study hall, it would have been like something that it didn't take too much of my needed too much of my attention. I would also join academic groups, seek out other teammates or other persons in my classes that you may be more knowledgeable about a topic or have a little bit more experience. In my classes, I found that I had a lot of older classmates. Like I had people that were in their 40s and 50s and 30s, and they had a lot of experience in the business side. So to me, I'm like, I'm in a room filled with people that are where I want to be. And so asking them, for some help, some any tips, that really helped me a lot to tackle, all of the demands of academics. I also sought out counseling at one point when I felt really overwhelmed, especially during the corona pandemic last year. Everything just being online and not being able to interact with the professors and the other classmates, that really took a toll on me because coming from Barbados in a small classroom setting, you talk to your professors, you get to have a relationship with them, ma'am, sir. So for me, that just learning online on the computer just wasn't ideal for me at all. And definitely seeking out counseling and even meeting with my professors. I would call my professors and just have like discussions. We talk about their kids. I would talk about track or whatever interests me. That helped me to like take the load off and stress a little less stressful for me.
That's right. That that seeking help is a very important part, and like you said, it's not a sign of weakness; it's a sign of strength
Yeah.
because what you're doing is recognizing within yourself a need, and you're taking care of that. If you found that you were sick, you would seek out a doctor, and you would want to get well. And when you're feeling overwhelmed and stressed, and like you needs, the world is crashing in on you. You need that extra
Support.
person to help recenter you, rebalance you, so you can get on with what you need to do. And
Yeah.
I noticed that we're getting close to end of time, and I want to kind of sum up what you guys have said, and that in it when you go to choose a college, when you go to choose a major, when you are in that process, mentors are your key, like getting the right mentors. And then when you get to choose your college, having mentors to help you through that process. And when you get there, especially for international students who have what I call cultural bumps, and that's not my term. It was a friend of mine who was a doctoral student who really studied international students coming into college situations. She called them cultural bumps because every time you go to a different culture, you're having to readjust.
Yes.
You have to readjust to the food, to the customs, uh, sometimes even the clothing, the music. It's always a little bit different than what home was. So those cultural bumps and having somebody there to help you. And what I heard both of you say, having people from your own area, Barbados, or from wherever you're from, because I've had people from all over the world, if there's someone there that you can have a community with that brings a little bit of home to you, that is helpful in helping you bring into balance
Hmm.
what you're going to need to do to be successful as a student athlete. Uh, Time management, organization, and teamwork uh, were things that came through that you are absolutely essential to keeping that balance. Uh, Making calendars, uh, looking ahead, not living in the moment, but looking ahead, planning ahead, even a whole semester ahead. Communication with professors,
Yeah.
communication with your coaches. I know at U of H we have what's called an academic day, and if I felt like a student athlete was really stressed out, or even the student athlete, if they were stressed out, they would come and say, "I really need an academic day," and I could pick up the phone and tell the coach, "This person needs an academic day," and they would spend the day with me on the floor, academic floor, really catching up and getting that piece of that stress out of their system so they could perform better. Because what I found that if you're out of balance, if you're paying too much attention to track,
Yeah.
to your sport, too much attention uh, to your academics, and not enough attention to you, you're out of balance. So you have to find that sweet spot
Yes.
uh, and and maintain it. And mentors are your key in all those aspects. Did I miss anything?
The only thing I would say is, to know your responsibilities. And as an international student, you have additional responsibilities, outside of your academic and athletic duties. You have to do regular check-ins and maintain your visa status, and also take a certain amount of classes. So I think understanding that you have to fulfill both academic and athletic responsibilities, but also your responsibilities as international students will also help you to keep that balance.
Yeah, most definitely. I think the biggest thing I always say and the biggest challenge to them is always understand this is the process of finding your identity and finding who you are.
Yeah.
Pretty much what Helen and Tristan has said and summarized pretty much everything is most importantly is understand this is the process of finding you. Ask all the right questions, make mistakes and learn from them, and then develop. There will be bumps along the way. This is not some happy-go-lucky, immediately everything's going to go your way process. Know that going abroad requires a level of maturity and you finding yourself and developing. And most importantly, know that there's always people there to help and aid you along on this journey.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe it. And I didn't see any questions come through from anybody that was in the audience, but we would be glad to have any questions if you have any questions. Uh, and uh, and anybody can always email me. I will be happy to answer you by email also. Yeah, I'm always open to students. I'm always open to
It
students.
looks like Sheena, it looks like someone had we I guess we had addressed the time management and transitioning on for so many things.
Yeah,
I guess one thing I would always say and even welcome, even from a question perspective, is and you guys could kind of yeah, we were talking about the time management and transition into the workplace. I think one thing a lot of our student athletes do struggle with is realizing how many of those transferable skills and the skills that you would have talked about, Helen, those three key skills that you can already put on a resume, things like critical thinking, leadership, and understand that those are things that are welcome to the workplace. And for you to gain those things ahead of time actually puts you ahead of the curve. And
Yeah.
after being in corporate environments and stuff, you'll be surprised how many individuals who come from what might be deemed the most prestigious institutions are lacking these skills that you've acquired ahead of time that separate you. And when you go into these places, there's a reason you end up becoming the one they want to put in leadership roles. Or I've been lucky enough to be fast tracked in a lot of positions I probably shouldn't have been as yet, mainly because of the experiences and the opportunities I gained from a student athlete perspective that helped me to understand how some others may view things. So understand that your identity as an athlete as well while developing who you are is a huge and tremendous strength. And I don't Tristan and Helen, I guess you guys can elaborate on that a little bit too.
I have found that true because I work with students and helping them get job interviews and stuff. And I've talked to a lot of people, and they prefer student athletes. I've had like Lockheed Martin called me. They said we want student athletes because they know they have the skills that they need. Maybe not the knowledge. They figure they can put the knowledge there, but if
Yeah.
they already have that discipline, they can transition into those jobs. And so, as an athlete, you have a leg up, so to speak, on everybody else.
Yeah.
If you take the time to really develop those skills as a student athlete and take advantage of the opportunities that you have as a student athlete and the mentors, then you will be able to transition easier, whether it's because, an injury that took you out or you graduated and you're not going on to be a professional athlete. And then sometimes when you're a professional athlete, at some point that athletic career will end, and you need to be able to transition into something else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me jump in for a second. I have a question for Tristan and Nikki.
Yeah.
Um, Basically, knowing what you know now and how the system in Barbados works, what advice would you give to a student athlete, a parent, or a coach where, right before the 11 plus, right before CXCs, right before A levels? Because, a lot of us stop training because we want to focus on doing well in the exam. But what advice will you give, to student athletes back home that, might be in that position?
Tristan, you want to tackle it first from a track and field perspective?
My advice would be you're never too young to start learning how to be organized and time manage. And as a parent, as a coach, as a mentor, you can start that process. Start that process early, and the earlier you do, the better the student athlete will be when they make that transition into college, to the job force, whatever. So I say starting that process early, helping them. Don't encourage them stopping completely, because then you're putting all your eggs in one basket, and that's not really balance, right? Balance is still being able to give equal amount of time, or maybe not equal, but prioritizing what is most important at the time, but not stopping completely. That would be my suggestion.
Oh yeah, and just to add to that, and then give a point there. I think understanding that if the conversation has been had ahead of time, all right, this is the plan, we want to go abroad. Pulling them out completely is not a benefit, because when they come to college, they'll get hit by a free training.
Yes.
It'll come at you very quickly. Like, oh my god, I feel so overwhelmed. I wait. I have midterms. I have quizzes basically every week. I'm managing 5 different classes. It can get very overwhelming. So actually, preparation for like the 11 plus A levels and being able to manage your sport is actually a strength and a benefit for you, because you're starting to think long term. I guess the only thing I could add to that is, if you know the conversation is starting to be around thinking long term, start to have conversations with coaches about what does the SATs look like for us. We know, like for example, spring might be a location, a testing location, or SJPP or whatever. Start to have those conversations early ahead of time, because I wish I knew going into my CXCs that I would have been still thinking about trying to get abroad, because I would have been preparing for CXCs, but I would have been preparing for my SATs even at an earlier stage, because the earlier the better. And we had ATS, SAT test prep, there are test preps classes you can take. You can take practice examinations actually ahead of time. So I think my challenge to them when it relates to what I know now would be to have the conversations earlier. And again, we don't want to be too military focused in a sense like this needs to happen, but having that conversation is actually a benefit. And trust that if you talk to coaches, they will give you the guidance that you need ahead of time. Don't think you have to figure it out by yourself.
Yeah, that's good advice. We actually have some questions. Um, One question from, is it Raj or Raji? What were the most challenging and surprising things when you on your journey of being an international student athlete? Yeah, I think you understand the question.
I guess it's gonna sound weird. Two things. One, know that because you're coming from someplace, you're operating with a chip on your shoulder. That doesn't mean that everyone in the environment is as committed as you or has the same perspective as you. The commitment you're bringing in might not be the same. You also need to learn that while everyone is learning you from a cultural standpoint, you also need to learn their culture and who they are as an individual.
Yes.
And especially coming from a team sport, what I quickly learned was that the drive and conditioning that I might have had, though we might have other talented teammates, they might not have the same commitments as me. And you just need to learn to navigate around that, because it can get very tricky. So I think culturally, learning to culturally, in a sense, learn their culture, learn the cultural dynamics, and learn the differences as individuals can really help. So I would really say exercise and critical thinking is something you probably one of the most challenging things, but something that's actually going to benefit you.
I would just like to add to that because, I mean, from my perspective, uh, it should not always be on you to learn about our culture.
Yeah.
Uh, as you're coming into our culture, it's important for us to learn about you
Yeah.
and what your culture is like, so that we can maybe blend some of that together, and we both learn from each other. I have learned so much about different cultures from my student athletes. So sharing your culture with other people from the culture that you're entering, I think is just as important.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as part of my job as a counselor was to try to make my students comfortable when they came from another country, because I knew there was going to be those cultural bumps and homesickness, and those sort of things, and to help them, guide them through that. So it's important, again, to have some mentor that can help you guide through the homesickness. And one of the things that I would do, because Tristan, I'll tell you, I like to bake. Uh, yes, I would oftentimes look up recipes of things that were from their home country and bring them in to the office, and then they got to share some of that with other people,
Yeah.
and we got to taste some of their other culture. So I think it should be a two-way street, that
Yes.
you need to educate those that your advisors, your teammates, and stuff, also about your culture. I believe that's an important part of it too.
Yeah.
Just
Fortunately for me, I've had the opportunity of both institutions that I've attended, Monroe College in New York and University of Houston. I've always had Barbadian counterparts. So when there's situations where I was homesick while I was in New York, my grandmother lived there. So on weekends I was racing to her home to get a good home cooked meal. And when I was at University of Houston, I had other Barbadians there as well to be able to have like reminisce and just have conversations about back home. And I do think it's important to share your culture with others as well, because it helps them to get to know you, as an individual. It gets them to for you guys to create a bond. And oftentimes they'll say, "Oh, I want to come visit you," or whatever the case may be. And sometimes and times for me, I've gotten to experience, going by my teammates families homes and get to experience like what life is like for them. And it's really eye-opening, and it helps you to deepen that bond with those around you.
I just want to add one quick surprise for me when I was in college is take home test. I've never had a take home test in Barbados and an open book test. And I'm like, open book test, like really? So that was one surprise for me. I mean, it doesn't happen in every class, but
Mm.
for me, what I found was going to school in the US was a little bit easier
Yeah.
coming from the Barbados system.
Yes.
And being a student athlete, you had a lot of help. Everything that you guys spoke about,
Mm.
the study hall, the academic
Mm.
counselors. I mean, you had a really good support system to help you balance both, your sport and education. And there's no reason why, we should fail. I think our system in the Caribbean is so tough that when
Yeah.
you get over to the US,
Yeah.
it's easy.
Mm.
We have another question from Dion Harris. Given the current environment with the pandemic and restrictions, are there any new things athletes need to think about?
That a plethora of things. I think working with students, like I still work with prospective student athletes a lot of the time too as well.
Mm.
So when I'm sitting in on board meetings, usually working with the athletic department, we're thinking about long term things for a lot of times. With the current environment, a big thing is not only something as simple as online classes is something you need to think about as well. We're alone. We are seeing the USCIS as a load for international students as well. There's been an ease on as it relates to online class requirements to help aid the situation.
Mm.
If there, for example, if there's an outbreak in a classroom, you might have more online classes. So something to think about is knowing that as a student athlete, there's a component there where practice schedules can actually vary now. And there's been certain eases from the NCAA when it comes to certain things, at least for my institution. There's an ease in certain things. So things to think about is earlier practice times more than usual. Potentially two a days while managing a class load is something that is very realistic right now that you need to pay attention to. because of the easing our requirements. What they've done is some coaches might not be able to have a whole team there because, let me say, we have an outbreak on the team. You might not be able to have everyone there, so there's adjustment in hours. So I think the biggest takeaway I think for them to think about is learning to be flexible.
Yeah.
Flexibility is very important during this period for a student athlete. So that would be my biggest thing to tell them. Like, think about being flexible. It's not just a military organization where you need to do this, this, but learning to be very fluid is very important as a student athlete in today's environment.
Yeah, definitely. You hit the nail on the head, being able to adapt, because there were times for me last year where we had to train like in a bubble setting, sometimes just with your roommate or just within your event group. That was a big thing for us because you like to blend as a team. You like to interact with all of the other athletes, and so just sometimes not having that opportunity to see all your friends. There were times like we went weeks without seeing the team or being together as a team. And I would say the next big thing is to really pay close attention to your mental health. Because in the pandemic, not being able to go out as much and to interact as much, especially for the extroverts out there, who live for, socializing and interacting with others, being isolated can be very, very challenging. And I know a lot of my teammates, they had a really tough time. So sometimes we would have check-in calls as a group. We get on Zoom and everyone would just checking and say hi, or you as an individual need to make sure you're doing what you can to also, be healthy mentally, and, not being afraid again to ask for help if you need it. And also, I think another main thing is the question about getting the vaccine is also another major thing, right? If that is something that's, is long term for you, is beneficial for you, start making the decision to get vaccinated. For me, I got vaccinated simply because I wanted to keep, those around me safe. I wanted to be able to go to competitions and be able to, not really mingle with others, but also make sure that I'm doing my due diligence and, keeping others around me healthy.
And I think also during the pandemic, because all the classes did go online,
Yeah.
And now we're having a few more that are in class and stuff, so it's easing up a little bit. But that time management and organization skills are highly important, because it's real easy with an online class to kind of put it aside and say, oh, I'll do it later. So setting times like you would be in classroom. So doing my work. Now, some classes, they had asynchronous and synchronous classes and totally online. So you had to be aware of which classes was which, and that could be confusing for athletes. I'm not supposed to be synchronous, so I have to be online at the same time as a professor, or is this asynchronous? So it got confusing for the athletes, and because of the pandemic, their support systems that are normally there were not readily available to them. So that caused another stress for them.
Another question from Latifa Wood. Is there any advice you can give a student athlete if they're experiencing lack of motivation or inspiration in their sport? And I think this is critical, especially now with the pandemic and not being able to train. A lot of people are already demotivated.
Yeah, that's Tristan. You want to tackle that, because I know you could talk about it even from the injury perspective that can come with that.
Yeah. I would say do what you can. Go back to your whys. Why do you want to be an athlete in the first place? What's your vision? What do you want to accomplish? Just remembering those things and reflecting on those things will, if not give you the motivation, it will at least help you to start doing some type of movement. I know back at home, things are really hard and you can't go to, facilities to train. Do what you can. For us, when the pandemic happened last year, we tried to go to parks. Sometimes we got kicked out of the parks. Sometimes they put up fences. So then we had to get creative and do the at-home workouts and stuff like that. If you need, motivation and more inspiration, um, you know, just talk to other people, the other athletes that are going through the same thing as well, and try to build each other up. Say, hey, look, I know times are hard right now, but how about we have a truce? Me and you, we'll work together and just try to get started somehow. And as time goes by, you start to feel a little bit better, and you eventually, come out of it.
Yeah, that's the truth. I think burnout is the killer of dreams and plenty of opportunities. Even attacking it from a deeper level, because Trishan even attacked it from that perspective. I can even attack it from a deeper level. Burnout, like I said, burnout is the killer of dreams and plenty of opportunities, as they say. I think understanding that because there's been a long-term commitment you've given to a sport and your identity has been linked to it, a lot of times there come moments where you get hit with the wall, I like to call it. In college is often there are three walls. There's the mid-season wall when you're in the middle of the season going every day. There is the sport wall that you have where you've committed so many years to the development of a sport. Sometimes you just hit that wall. And then there's the senioritis wall when you're senior year and you just hit that wall. So there's those three walls and those three challenges. Regardless of what people tell you, those things are in place. And professional athletes, you can talk about it today. And playing at the highest level, you can attest to this as well. Doing your sport at the highest level, there are moments where you hit that.
Yeah.
Usually, going back to what Tristan said, understanding your root and level of commitment and what led you there is the most vital thing. So I think the vision board aspect, I'm very big into the vision board component of things. That often helps you because you have something to refer to. I'm big, and if it's in black and white, it holds to the heart, other than you just singing it. So really taking a moment when you have those feelings to write down my who, what, when, where, and why. Who brought me here? What brought me here? Why am I here? Why am I doing this? Will often, probably 99.9% of the time, get you above that lack of motivation.
Yeah, I can, speak to, after 17 years of watching students go through, having lack of motivation or inspiration to get what they wanted to do, is that sometimes there are other issues that are underlying that lack of motivation and for them. Sometimes there's issues at home that are underlying it, and it just zaps all of their energy. So they have no energy. So as my job as a counselor was to try to ferret out where that lack of motivation was coming from, and then make sure that they got the resources to address those issues. That uh, all of those things, talking to other people, looking at, what your goals are, what your aspirations are, you know, uh, and, and life happens, and especially for our international students, grandma gets really sick and she's dying. They get really depressed. They lose their motivation for being there.
Yeah.
Those are issues that are real. And those are issues that we as a counselor have to be prepared to address with our students and make sure that they have the right resources to help them during those times.
Yeah, thank you very much. Question coming from Shari Matthew. In terms of school and training, even though we do that in Barbados, was it difficult to transition into two-a-day practice sessions? I know that's not a common practice in Barbados with most sports. I think the swimmers do it, but how
Yeah.
was that for you?
I think when we go back to one of the hard things to challenge is that, especially. I think looking at it from a local perspective, depending on your sport or focus, you grow very accustomed to the Monday, Wednesday, Saturday, or Monday gym might not be available. I might go Tuesday, Wednesday I might have badminton in the gym, so then Thursday I might do out. So you're not accustomed to a structured schedule, and I know long term that's one of the plans from what the BOA has been doing in working long term in the development of sport at a local level, especially. I think two of these were very hard. So for us, primarily, I can speak from a volleyball perspective, traditional routine, learning how schedules can work at the student athlete level overseas is important for you. So for example, a traditional week can look like Monday morning, I might have a 5 a.m. cardio or a lifting session, training room, 8 o'clock practice, breakfast, 8 o'clock practice, go through the day. Midday, we might have a meeting, depending on prep, might have a film session. 5 o'clock might be walkthroughs or another practice with us focus. Practice to like 8:39. Usually we get a note, you still have to do homework, you have to do studying, you might have study pods. Understanding that that is very realistic as a student athlete is very important for you to grasp at an early stage. I know Tristan, for you, you can even attack it from a different perspective, but knowing that there are components and there's commitments required of you, it's going to be hard. I will tell you that ahead of time. It's going to be hard. There's going to be this. There's a reason I told you there's that mid-season wall, that mid-semester wall, and all these things. Learning to navigate that comes with the time management, understanding going back to your way, like we talked about. So it's not going to be easy, but do know that you're more than capable of doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Two of their practice sessions, just brought about a lot of memories. I remember my first couple of weeks, it was really, really hard. Sometimes I think I had weights at 6 a.m., and as Nikki said, the schedule is very hectic. So 6 a.m., then you have classes at 8. So it is very, very difficult. But again, I think as human beings and just as athletes, you learn to adapt quickly. Just understanding that it's a process. It'll take time. You have to, remain patient, and just eventually it'll all click, and you'll feel like you can handle the workload a little bit better. So just give yourself a little bit of grace, and and the thing is, those that when you look at it from classes, from the freshman class to the senior class, the seniors are still going through it too, even though they've been there longer. They're still struggling the same way that you are as a freshman coming in, right? So it's always going to be tough, but you're gonna have the people around you and the support around you to get through it.
Thanks. And as we wrap up quickly, there's one more question from Serena Buffett. How difficult did you find it to be while transitioning from a regular student athlete to an international student athlete, while coping with mental health and the idea of balancing education?
That's a great question. Tristan, you want it? You want me to go first? You want to think on it? You sound.
Hi, sister. Transitioning from a regular student athlete to an international student athlete, it was a lot. Mentally, physically, again, you have so many responsibilities outside of the regular American student, and even from back up being at home in Barbados, you have additional responsibilities now. So for me, again, the balance came where I had to time manage, and knowing what my responsibilities were, first and foremost, was the key. Knowing that I had athletic obligations, academic obligations, international student athlete obligations. Knowing all those things helped me to transition a little bit better. It still was a lot. It was very tedious, but just knowing what my responsibilities were really helped me to know. Okay, I kind of make a checklist. Okay, I have to register for classes. I have to show up for ISS. Whatever the case is, that helped me to knowing my responsibilities helped me to navigate. Being an international student athlete.
Yeah, I think navigating that, I will say, most importantly, is to definitely I want you to get a board and write down what your primary goal is. What's your long-term goal here? Because that is what's going to get you through a lot of those moments and plenty of times, especially from being the international student in a space. Tristan was lucky enough to have others there. I didn't have others there, and to the point that people in the environment will find a way. They'll address you by your country name. They'll call you Barbados as opposed to your name sometimes.
Yeah.
But from an identity standpoint, really, your identity becomes very important. And understanding what your long-term goal is what's going to guide you. And from a mental health perspective, just constantly kind of remind yourself, slow things down. And if you have people like Helen in your corner, seek and welcome that help, because a lot of times we can be very closed off because we think we're coming from a different nation and other people might not be able to understand us.
Right.
Actually, there are a lot of people there that genuinely care at a lot of these colleges and universities. So welcome that and be willing to seek that help.
And I find that especially true in the athletic department, because athletic departments are truly our international areas and universities, and helping those students make those transitions to being those international students and getting there is an important part of what we do in the athletic department.
We have one more question and then we're going to wrap up.
Okay.
From Vic Payne. Hello, big brother. Advice you give to a student athlete coming from Barbados who has never experienced cold weather. What advice or how would you prepare Barbadian athletes for that kind of?
Uh,
And
Bring
this
a
is
heavy
funny
coat.
because Nikki and I were speaking about this offline.
yeah,
School in Illinois. He's currently Illinois Iowa border.
yeah.
That school is no joke. But
I saw Vic ask the other question, so I'll tie everything in together. Um, one, get a very good winter jacket. Um, two, just do your research on the area you're going into.
Yes.
Do your research ahead of time. That's going to help mentally prepare you. Also, have visualizations at home. So take a lot of pictures and pretend you're
Thank
at the
you.
beach. But honestly, most importantly, just understand you will develop. Like, honestly, in hindsight, I got sick in like 59-degree weather. No, I will wear a t-shirt in 59-degree weather.
Yeah.
Comfortably. Very comfortably. So you will adapt over time. And then to another question you had asked, long term for a lot of student athletes, there will be potentially a lot of institutions are considering removing the SAT requirements. Just understand that the WES, World Education Services, will convert any grades done at the high school level at Barbados at home. So any students who are thinking about going abroad, just to slip this in there, you can have those conversations with the secondary school secretaries ahead of time so that your transcripts can get translated to the American grading system. So it's actually a benefit for you now long term if you have great high school or secondary school grades because it removes you having to worry about the SATs and passing certain requirements because it really is a trick question
Yeah.
score and not
Which brings
necessarily.
which brings up, the school that you choose, know what their requirements are.
Yeah.
And if you don't know, ask, because the coaches, if they don't know, that they have academic people they can ask.
Yeah.
And so it's important for you to know what your requirements are going to be, so you're not waiting to the last minute to get those things together.
Yeah, most certainly.
Yes. And also to quickly add, for those for those that do not know, junior colleges actually are very, very generous. They do not require SATs at all. So that is a route that persons can take. And for as being an advocate for the junior colleges, my JUCO strong, JUCO made people, my JUCO product people, as a recruit, sorry, you can make impact right away because the programs are generally smaller. The class sizes are generally better suited for Barbadians because they're usually smaller.
And that
So it
transition.
really helps with, it really caters to your development in the classroom and on the field of play. And lastly, junior colleges increases your chance of getting recruited at a four-year college because it shows you have experience in handling college level academics and athletics.
Yep. Yep.
Perfect point.
I'm
Yeah,
back.
and in terms of coldness, I don't think Houston gets you out of that because we do have snow occasionally here.
Victor, just to add a little bit, how do you transition or prepare for the cold? I know Aminiki says in 59-degree weather he wears a t-shirt. No, on the 70 degrees, no. You gear up. You get your hat, your gloves, your ear muffs,
Yes.
two
Yeah.
t-shirts, sweater. And I ran track, and I had to. Some days it was snow there, and coaches like, Sheena, you have to get in your mug, and I'm like,
Yeah.
where?
Yeah. Yeah.
He's on the treadmill, and I don't like the treadmill. So you know what? I had to layer up and go. For me, I never got accustomed to the cold, but I knew what my focus was. I knew what I was there to do. Layer up and just go.
The
Yeah.
end goal will often be your driving force. And honestly, that a lot of times what you're there for and knowing your why will get you through a lot of those situations.
Yeah, similar to me, I remember literally shoveling snow off the track, and also we couldn't transition into outdoor season because it was still cold in New York. So most of the time it's outdoor season, but we're still training indoors. But again, like Sheena said, if you know your wife, you know the reasons for being there, you're gonna make no excuses and you're gonna overcome them. You're gonna find a way to adapt. I personally did not like the layering up because it made me feel heavy when I was running. So I would try to wear a t-shirt and a long tights, which didn't suffice. It ended up getting pneumonia. But I think like there's a lesson to it in that the mind is so strong and can overcome so much. Like I remember just thinking, think warm, think home, and that helped get me through the cold days.
Thank you so very much, Tristan. As we wrap up, we're going to ask a couple questions because it's T-shirt a giveaway time. First question: who was Tristan's mentor? So, if we can get the first person to answer that. At the beginning of the session, Tristan mentioned who her mentor is. Sorry.
Can I give a hint?
No hints, Tristan. And I will wait to see if anybody remembers and answers that question correctly. Who was Tristan's mentor? You want to give a hint then?
We're gonna have to start giving clues.
Yeah, go ahead and give your clue, Tristan.
Okay, so for my Springer viewers, he was a teacher. Yeah, somebody said.
Serena answers. So Serena is our lucky winner of our T-shirt. And that same question applies to Aminiki. I know he mentioned about 4, but I'm just ask one, and you cannot say Anicia would. So who was Tristan?
One of them were in the chat.
Tristan's sorry, Aminiki's mentor.
We can give make it easier for them. One of them is still in the chat.
Can the panelists also give an answer?
No, ma'am.
How she give away herself?
Now you cannot answer the question.
How she give away herself in the chat? I don't understand this.
Any more hints?
Well, she just gave herself away in the chat, so no one will type it first.
Well, Latifa answered and said, Miss Matthews. You are eligible, Latifa.
Clearly inserted information.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for joining.
Valmate.
I mean, it's all one big sporting family.
Well, it doesn't help. She was one as well too. So.
Yeah. I really just want to wrap up and say thank you very much to the team tonight. For your time, your information. It was very informative. On behalf of the Barbados Athletes Commission, thank you very much this is for the viewers. Thank you very much for joining us. If you've been on for the entire week, we want to say thank you to Andrea Blackett, Shane DeFreitas, Terrence Sains, Akila Jones, Jamil Jones, Alex Jordan, Shalise Jordan, Katrina Bittall, Tristan Evelyn, Aminiki Wood, and Helen Gore Lear. Those are all our presenters this week. The information can be found on YouTube, on Barbados Olympic Association's YouTube page. And before I wrap up everything, I want to say, go to our website, www.myteam246.com. That's the Barbados Athletes Commission page. A lot of information will be coming there. Tune into our social media pages, IG and Facebook, Barbados Athletes Commission. And I cannot end without saying a big thank you to the chair of Barbados Athletes Commission, Anicia Wood, as well as the members, Martin Ford, Amber Joseph, Carl Maxwell, Tanya Oxley, Sean Simpson, and last but not least, myself, Sheena Gooding. Thank you very much. We had a wonderful time with all the viewers, all the presenters, and like I said, you can go back and rewatch the stream.
Sheena, can I sneak one thing before we wrap up? Quickly, for all of those watching, if you have the opportunity, you can follow me on Facebook. Long term, I'll be setting up, going into the new year, the goal is to set up a foundation in memory of a scholarship foundation in memory of Shamar Bishop, one of my former junior teammates who would have passed away a few years back. In memory of him, the goal is to start to offer scholarship money to primarily volleyballers right now, but long term, the goal would be to expand to other sports. We've been lucky enough to have 2 recipients so far, being Akil Williams. He's been the first recipient of the scholarship somewhat unofficially, technically right now. And we've been able to, the long term, the goal is even if SATs drift away, those scholarship monies will be going to like, if an individual acquires a scholarship, that would go to money going towards like their flight to come down and transition. Might be book cost for that first year. It might not be a lot, but the goal is to start there and officially expand to where it could maybe eventually officially cover like a full scholarship as it relates to books, tuition, anything that might be necessary.
Thank you very much, Emily. That's a great initiative. And that is it for us for tonight. Once again, thank you, thank you, thank you. Stay tuned to the social media pages for more upcoming and exciting initiatives. Oh, sorry, I think I forgot to thank the Barbados Olympic Association. I hope I did it. Thanks for joining us and allowing us to use your platform. Have a good night, all.
Good night. It was a pleasure.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
night.